What's up, Chicago? Happy Saturday. It is Sports Talk Chicago here on WLS AM 890. I'm Joey Christopoulos. We've got a great episode for you here over the next hour, so make sure you stick around, tune in, let's talk Chicago sports, and let's get to this week's episode. Welcome, everybody, into the show. So happy to have you here. I want to thank everybody for supporting week after week. We've gotten great feedback from WLS AM 890. The listeners there, keep on listening, keep telling people about Sports Talk Chicago. And also, viewership has been up on our YouTube channel, so I just want to thank everyone for the continued support. We are going to talk some Chicago Bears. That's what we're typically doing during the season, but I wanted to take a step off the beaten path of Chicago Bears talk just for a little bit as we prepare. We're getting this bye week. Once the Chicago Bears are back against the Washington Commanders, it is game on the rest of the season. So I wanted to fit in some Chicago sports talk, and I wanted to talk some Chicago Cubs. I feel like it's appropriate. The World Series is happening, Yankees, Dodgers. So let's talk a little bit about our Chicago Cubs. When it comes to the Yankees and Dodgers, look, I know they're both front runners. I know they're both popular. I know they have the East Coast. We've got the West Coast. Middle America kind of sticks its nose up to it. I'll be honest with you, I am excited to watch. It's going to happen once in my lifetime. Let it happen now with Shohei Ohtani, with Aaron Judge. May the best team win. Personally, I grew up always rooting against the Yankees. I lived in Southern California for over a decade. I've been to a lot of Dodgers games. I have a lot of Dodgers fans. I'm not a Dodgers fan, but I'm probably leaning a little bit Dodgers in this series from a sentimental factor. But I hope the ratings are great. I hope baseball enjoys it. I hope baseball fans enjoy it. It always makes me laugh when they go Yankees, Dodgers, boo. The biggest, baddest markets, the biggest, baddest teams get to play in the World Series. Well, I promise you, if you're rooting for the underdog, if it was the Royals, be honest with yourself. Were you actually going to be watching? I hopefully believe and think people are going to be tuning in for this. And the way I want to front this a little bit is I want to talk about the Chicago Cubs. Because in my opinion, when we talk about the Yankees, when we talk about the Dodgers, when we talk about the Philadelphia Phillies, and by other extensions, the San Diego Padres, the New York Mets, I put the Chicago Cubs in that category. They should be behemoths. They should be the Yankees of Middle America, the Dodgers of Middle America. And again, low 80s, no playoffs, searching for answers. My main point with the Chicago Cubs is going to come down to a little something we call R.O.I. And for you business majors out there, don't worry. I looked it up for everybody else. It's called return on investment. And a couple of things I'm going to be talking about here about the Chicago Cubs are going to touch upon that and what Jed Hoyer has failed to do and what I think he needs to do heading into this offseason. Let's start with the current news and notes. Came down this week. Surprise, surprise. Nico Hoerner had forearm surgery this week. Apparently something that had been hindering him, significantly bothering him for most of this season. You know, when you talk right forearm, I immediately think elbow. You immediately go to shoulder. When you talk about it with pitchers, you immediately think Tommy John surgery. They haven't said that that's the type of surgery that he's having. And they are unfamiliar with what his recovery time is going to look like until he reports to spring training. So big question mark for Nico Hoerner. Nico Hoerner, tough first half of the season offensively. Look, the guy has to hit for contact. He has to be on base. He has to hit for high average to be a valuable player in Major League Baseball. He's not going to hit you 20 home runs. He's not going to slug over 450. So in the first half, went into a little bit of some bad luck. Average wasn't there. I really like how he rebounded. He got over 270 by the end of the season. I like Nico Hoerner as a player. But what does this forearm surgery mean for him and the Chicago Cubs moving forward? Well, in the here and now, there are a lot of people that believe in this offseason that the Chicago Cubs are going to try to trade Nico Hoerner, or at least look around and see what the market could be. If you go around the blogs, I know the Seattle Mariners definitely have him on their list of guys that they would like to acquire. Unfortunately, with that, I think you're probably going to have to either table those talks or be prepared to probably get less of a return for Nico Hoerner in a trade. Do the Chicago Cubs really want to do that? I don't think so. I think now possibly on previous shows I have said that, in my opinion, heading into next year, the Chicago Cubs cannot have all three of these particular players on the team at the same time. One of them has to go. And in my opinion, it's Nico Hoerner, Michael Busch, or Isaac Paredes. If I had to keep any of those, I was probably keeping Nico Hoerner. So what does this mean for Michael Busch and Isaac Paredes moving forward? We'll see, but forearm surgery doesn't sound great. In the long term for Chicago Cubs fans, the other part was there was always this nice, versatile, flexible ability that Nico Hoerner had. He came up as a shortstop. They moved him over to second base. He's a Gold Glove winner, Gold Glove finalist as a second baseman. At shortstop, I think he probably could have won the same type of awards, be a Gold Glove finalist at shortstop. But they signed Dansby Swanson, they moved him over to second. My concern moving forward, though, is that if Dansby Swanson ever went down, I think Nico Hoerner became the de facto backup shortstop. If he has forearm surgery on his right arm, does that take that out of the picture moving forward? What does that rehab look like? And if you're not going to know whether he's going to be healthy or not by the time spring training comes around, do they even bother trying to rehab it to the point where he could play shortstop? He can maybe even play third base in a pinch. Or are they just going to try and get him out there, make sure he can make the throws at second base, and go that route? His contract is very amenable. It's not for a lot of money. I think probably that's part of the reason why some people believe that he could be on the trade market. But this is a surprise for Cubs fans. Obviously not a surprise for the front office. But it does make you scratch your head a little bit and think, what does this look like for Nico Hoerner heading into spring training? And more importantly, what does this look like for the Chicago Cubs in the next year or two with Nico Hoerner on the team? They have guys like James Triantos. They have Matt Shaw. Look, prospects that are hitting the ball well, that are moving and accelerating through the system. But I got to tell you, if you don't know me by now, I'm a prospects believe it when I see it guy. I don't reserve seats for prospects in Major League Baseball. If anything, they come up and they force their way into a lineup to the point where maybe they get those 160, 190 at-bats, and then that next offseason you move on and then you give him the full-time role. It's exactly what we did with a guy like Javi Baez. And that seemed to turn out pretty well for quite some time. The next person on the list, news and notes, is keep in mind, after this World Series, Cody Bellinger has 5 days to decide whether he wants to opt in to his contract with the Chicago Cubs. It was a 3-year deal for $80 million. I believe it's approximately $30 million, give or take a few million, if he opts into this one coming up next year. And a lot of people are split on this. I think this is pretty simple. I think if you're Cody Bellinger, I think you 1,000% want to opt into your deal. If you're Cody Bellinger and you have $30 million sitting on the table right now, and you say to yourself, why would I go to the open market right now? He had a down year from his previous year. And his previous year got him around $80 million. Okay, baseline. He comes back, isn't quite as good. Are you saying he goes into the open market and gets more than $80 million this time around? I have my doubts. So, if you're Cody Bellinger, the move is easy. You opt into your deal for $30 million. You play another year. Hopefully, you are better than you were last year. Or even if you are the same, you go back into the market again and you sign another deal that perhaps is probably for $60 to $80 million. You have that $30 million already in the bank. Now you're over $100 million. Boom. If you go into the market now, this could be the last bite at the apple if Cody Bellinger just is the player who he was last year. A really good hitter, mind you. He just like the rest of a lot of pieces in the Chicago Cubs lineup, Cody Bellinger, it's just kind of mid in the slugging category. He doesn't scare you. Opposing pitchers aren't like, oh man, we got to pitch around Cody Bellinger. Whatever you do, don't give Cody Bellinger a pitch to hit. No, they think they can get him out. Does he have a lot of traits that I like a lot? Oh, Yes, I'm 40 years old, okay? I grew up in the 90s, all right? When 2 strikes are on, dude chokes up, he pokes the ball the other way. I go nuts for that stuff. I get a little sweaty just thinking about it. So don't get me wrong. I like Cody Bellinger as a player. But he has a decision to make, and in my opinion, I think Cody Bellinger opts in at this time. Now, the biggest question here is, does Jed Hoyer want that? I'm going to read quotes from Jed Hoyer, and you tell me. Let's read between the lines, shall we? Jed Hoyer said at his after-season press conference, because the Chicago Cubs are nowhere near the postseason right now. He said, I quote, "If Bellinger had a good year, we knew that he would have a lot of options," Jed Hoyer said. Quote, "I expect him to have a lot of options. Obviously, it will impact team building, figuring out what positions we're filling. He is versatile, but it'll have an impact. But I expect he'll have a bunch of options given how he played this year." If you don't want to, I will read between the lines for you. I think Jed Hoyer is crossing his fingers that Cody Bellinger opts out of his deal. And I don't think it's because Jed Hoyer thinks that Cody Bellinger can't play, that Cody Bellinger can't be probably not a 3-4 hitter, but a really impactful 5-6 hitter in a postseason playoff type roster. I think Jed Hoyer's looking at that $30 million and he's saying, man, I didn't get what I paid for. I didn't get ROI, return on investment. And Jed Hoyer can find a player that hits 20 home runs like it's nobody's business. He has a hard time finding players that are 30 to 35 home runs. So I think he's thinking, if Cody Bellinger opts out, I get that $30 million back. I can spend it probably somewhere else and probably bring in another 20-plus home run hitter. I'm being cheeky with that. But if you read between the lines of what he just said, I think he'll have a bunch of options out there. I think that's kind of spreading the breadcrumbs a little bit of, I hope, Cody, you test the market, and I hope you get a new deal, and I hope I get that $30 million back. Because for Jed Hoyer, that was not a return on investment. We're going to get into it right now. Jed Hoyer is big on not just ROI, but people that outperform projections. This is such an interesting one. In any workplace, of course, when you're given a task, a responsibility, a job, you always want to over-deliver, right? Under-promise, over-deliver. In baseball, and I've talked about this with Jed Hoyer a lot, is he really struggles with what we just call bankability. Where are you starting from? What is your floor? Stop talking about the ceiling. And for Jed Hoyer, it's a real blind spot for him. And when we're talking about Cody Bellinger and that $30 million, I think Jed Hoyer expected him to not only match what he did the first year that he was in the Cubs uniform, but exceed it and outperform his projections. So I'm going to get into this in a second here, but I want to make sure that I'm reading Jed Hoyer's quotes to understand where he's coming from. And then I'm going to give you my opinion on why I think there's a level of deception there and why I think Chicago Cubs fans simply deserve better. So Jed Hoyer, again, season's over, doing his end-of-season press conference. Reporter there asks him about potentially seeking more star power to help the offense. Jed Hoyer pointed to players, quote-unquote, outperforming projections as a main goal for 2025. Quote, "To get to a place where we can build our projections up," Hoyer said, "and consistently make the postseason year after year, I think there is a level of discipline to do that. You don't want to take wild swings, and you don't want to do things that are going to expose you long term. I think the goal here is getting to a place where the playoffs are an expectation every single year." Getting to a place, Jed, they've been there for the last 7 years, Jed. Once you won the World Series, and even before that, let's be honest here, when they bring in Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer, that was the expectation then, was they get to the point where we're in the playoffs year after year after year. We gave them a few years. They built up. They brought the kids up in 15. 15 surprised us all. What a great season that was. They won in 16, and then they went back to the NLCS in 17, on and on. We can go through it. Well, he broke that team up. Keep in mind now, he broke that team up in 2021. a while ago, 3.5 years ago, and he's still talking about trying to build this team up where the expectations are playoffs every single season. The other part that I found really interesting, you don't want to take wild swings, and you don't want to do things that are going to expose you long term. So what exactly does that mean, Cubs fans? I think that's basically a shot out to Cubs fans that we're not going to be involved in Juan Soto. And I think it's absolutely short-sighted for him to worry about exposing the Cubs to something like that long term. Juan Soto is 24 years old. Got a long way to go. Currently in the World Series. Currently looking for a contract not only probably above $300 million, but over $400 million. And here's what it is. Across the landscape of Major League Baseball, I get it. There are some bad, bloated contracts out there. But sometimes those contracts go to players that are stars and not superstars. And I think my only hope for Jed Hoyer would be that he can probably recognize when the superstars come along, there's only so many of them, and you can't wait forever. They're really hard to grow on trees as in your farm system as a prospect. They're hard to acquire. They're hard to lock up. But if you get an opportunity to do it, you just got to dive in and you got to do it. The R.O.I. will always pay for itself one way or the other. And I love this Yankee-Dodgers World Series right now for another reason. The other one is it completely blows up this concept that Tom Ricketts trucked out last spring training about him looking longingly at the try-hard Diamondbacks and them making, just get in the postseason. Who knows what'll happen? You only need 84 wins to scratch your way into the postseason. Let's see what happens. I mean, that is a gamble that I don't think Chicago Cubs fans deserve to roll on every single year. And they have been doing that for 2 years now. If we just squeak our way in, is that really what the Chicago Cubs are? A team that tries hard, squeaks its way in? I mean, look, I love hustle. Don't get me wrong. But the Chicago Cubs should be competing for World Series every single year. The playoffs should be a prerequisite. The playoffs, I mean, the regular season is the amuse-bouche. And then you get to the playoffs, and then you see what happens. Then you assess how they perform in the playoffs and not the regular season. Craig Counsell, the manager of the Cubs, said it himself. We have to get to the point where we're winning 90 games regularly. And this mentality that the Chicago Cubs dare not expose themselves to what Jed would consider be a wild swing, I think philosophically, I think he's pulling one over on us, guys. I'll be honest with you. Now, here's a really interesting one, right? I'm going to read you. I'm going to go through this as fast as I can. There's 25 top paid players in Major League Baseball right now. I'm going to go through the list. I'm going to start the most expensive. We're going to work our way all through 25. And there's something that really interesting happens about halfway through. So here we go. The biggest contracts in baseball, the obvious one, obviously Shohei Ohtani, currently in the World Series, hit over 50-plus home runs, almost stole 60 bases, and oh yeah, we'll probably pitch again one day. All right, Unicorn was always going to sign with the Dodgers. I'm with you. Moving on. Mike Trout. All right, this is a contract that does not look very good. You can have the argument that it is the injuries, because for a very long time, Mike Trout was by a country mile the best player in Major League Baseball. You can also put this a little bit on the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who are one of the worst organizations, and not just baseball, but also maybe the sport. I mean, it's White Sox level, guys. I mean, the minor league players had to sue the owner because of the poor working conditions and nutrition, accessibility, and all this stuff there's a lot of stuff going on with the Angels right now. So I hear you that the Mike Trout contract doesn't look very good, but the Angels also handed one out to Josh Hamilton, handed one out to Albert Pujols, handed one out to Anthony Rendon. Maybe it's more about them than it is about Mike Trout. Moving on. Mookie Betts with the Los Angeles Dodgers, currently in the World Series. Aaron Judge, New York Yankees, currently in the World Series. Manny Machado, San Diego Padres, just played in the playoffs. 30-plus home runs every single year, 90-plus RBIs, mark him down. Francisco Lindor, a king in New York right now, went to the playoffs, almost got there. Fernando Tatis on the San Diego Padres in the playoffs. Bryce Harper, been to a World Series with the Philadelphia Phillies. Yamamoto on the Dodgers, currently in the World Series. Giancarlo Stanton, currently in the World Series. Corey Seager won a World Series just 2 seasons ago. Garrett Cole, Yankees, World Series. Rafael Devers, okay, hasn't made the playoffs. Boston Red Sox had to pay him. All right, him, Trout, I get it. Trey Turner, Philadelphia Phillies, $300 million in the playoffs. And Bobby Witt, at just underneath $300 million, made the playoffs this year. Got a long, great career. So it looks like, Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer, that for the most part, when you pay the upper echelon elite, the superstars, like a Juan Soto, it says so far across this list that it looks like it works out. Now, where they get an opportunity to debate this, and I think it's very fair, is that if you look at some of the guys then in the 200 range, like who did they give $200 million plus deals to, the 175 to the 285 range? Go through this really quick, and this is where it gets fair. Anthony Rendon on the Angels, terrible contract. Austin Riley, good contract, won a World Series. Good job by him. That's a great player, good player. Julio Rodriguez with the Seattle Mariners, huge fan favorite, could be a superstar. Production way down this year. Is he worth the money? Is he worth the R.O.I? I'm not so sure. Carlos Correa on the Minnesota Twins did not make the playoffs. Okay. Christian Yelich made the playoffs, but again, his numbers have gone a little south from, I think, when he first originally signed that deal. Are the Brewers, if you put truth serum into them, are they ultimately happy with that deal? I would probably say they'd maybe lean no. Jacob deGrom, again, hurt all the time. Not a good contract. Chris Bryant, I had to do it. Colorado Rockies, 185. Not a good contract. And then finally, to round out the top 25, Dansby Swanson at about 175. So among this list, 3 of them are Dodgers, 3 of them are Yankees, 2 of them are Padres, 2 of them are Philadelphia Phillies. Chicago Cubs, 0. And in my opinion, the Chicago Cubs should be playing in these waters. They should have at least one of these guys on that list. I hear you, Jed Hoyer, that taking a wild swing and giving somebody 150 to 280 can look like a bad deal. Because then, honestly, it sounds more like you're paying what the market dictates, probably what a career year says that this player earns. And a lot of these guys are stars that definitely deserve to be paid, but are they superstars? Are they upper echelon guys? So in my opinion, I'm with Jed Hoyer. In that 170 to 280 range, you got to be really careful. You got to know the player, and you got to get it right. But if you look at all the guys that are making over $300 million right now, I would take any of those guys on my team right now. And all those dudes are worth their salt. All those dudes give you what I call ROI, return on investment. You think the Dodgers are happy right now with Shohei Ohtani? You think the Yankees are happy with... Honestly, there was a lot of rumors that Aaron Judge was going to walk. He went out, hit a ton of home runs. Yankees signed him back up, and now they're in the World Series. I get it. It isn't just Judge. It also takes a Juan Soto. It takes a Giancarlo Stanton in October. I get all that. But a lot of these guys paying them, it's worked out. So you can't tell me exposing long-term health, if you're going to go after Juan Soto and you're going to go after him with a $400 million contract, he is young enough. We know he's one of the best hitters in the game. He belongs on that list 100%. And I don't think it's a wild swing to go after Juan Soto. I don't think it exposes you long-term to go after Juan Soto. You can literally structure it. If you gave him, let's say, a 10-year deal, and let's say whatever, $450 million, chump change to me, right, folks? If you gave him that contract, you can offer him an opt-out after 6 years. You can let him walk back into the market at 29 and 30, and then all of a sudden maybe you're not so exposed to the long-term health of the organization. And you can't, and here's the other problem is when you're talking two sides of the mouth, right? Jed Hoyer, you can't tell me that your organization prospect-wise is so healthy that you feel so good about some of these guys that are coming up that you also can't spend a ton of money on one truly elite superstar, possible already Hall of Fame player like Juan Soto? Typically, teams that are so healthy in their farm system are the ones that go after and absorb those kind of hits because they can bring up guys and have them for 7 years of control. They can go through arbitration. You have trade pieces. You have chips. You have a lot of stuff. You have the flexibility. So if you're telling me out of one side that the Chicago Cubs are in a healthy place as an organization and they got guys coming up, and there's a part of me that wants to believe it too as well. There's a part of me that says Jed Hoyer is beginning to develop pitching. I want to believe that that's true. Then that means you are in a perfect position to go out and take a wild swing on a player like Juan Soto and spend over $350, over $400 million. You're telling me this guy, he hits 40-plus home runs at Wrigley. He's our cleanup hitter. He's on base over 400 every single year. He slugs over 500. His OPS is always in the 950, maybe even in the 1,000 category. You're telling me that guy in your lineup the next 3 or 4 years, you believe so deeply in your moves in your farm system. You add that piece right now to this 82 whatever win team. I think you're going to get the ROI that Chicago Cubs fans have been clamoring for a long time. It's not, let's sign Cody Bellinger and pray instead of 22 home runs, he hits me 28 or 29 and he outperforms his projections. I don't understand that mentality. You're literally signing players and then you're hoping that you're better than they actually probably are? It doesn't make any sense. Raise the floor. The Chicago Cubs fans, we have expectations. And our floor for those expectations do not meet that of Jed Hoyer. And when you're talking about ROI, and when you're talking about these big money deals that Ricketts says are the worst, they're anchors on a franchise. Just go back and look at the list of the top dozen MLB players, and you'll see littered playoff appearances, all-stars, most of them playing in World Series, a lot of them on major market teams like the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Yankees. And oh yeah, that's where the Chicago Cubs should be. And they need to wake up and they need to get with the times and they need to start spending that type of money on those type of players. I'm really not advocating for anyone other Juan Soto, maybe Vladimir Guerrero Jr., future episode. But I'll stick with Juan Soto for right now because I think Chicago Cubs fans deserve it. Don't go middle, go all the way, and take that wild swing, and I promise you it will not expose you long term. Coming back here on Sports Talk Chicago with Joey Christopoulos right here on WLS AM 890. I hope you're having a wonderful Saturday night, Chicago. I don't know, maybe you're driving around right now, and maybe I'm talking to someone in costume right now. Maybe they're in full makeup. Maybe they're Frankenstein. Maybe they look like Thanos. Maybe they look like Marie Antoinette. It's tough to say, but I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Going to preview Chicago Bears versus the Washington Commanders. Now, look, you have to bear with me on this one. I recorded part one during the week. I have to submit this show to WLS prior to Saturday. So I did the best I could to hang in there to try and get you the most up-to-date Jaden Daniels news that we possibly can. As of this taping right now, Adam Schefter tweeted that clearly Jaden Daniels did not practice on Thursday. He is going to try and attempt to practice on Friday. You probably will have that information by now. It looks like it's going to be a game time call. So regardless, I said in the first segment that I want the Chicago Bears to play Jaden Daniels. I want us to play the best. I want Caleb Williams to play the best, and I want him to go out there and start slaying some of these QB dragons around the NFL so that when we look at the schedule, we say to ourselves, yeah, we have the better quarterback in this matchup. I want to live in that universe. But either way, the Chicago Bears got to take care of business on their own. They're coming off a bye. They're 4-2. We don't need to do a math lesson because I already said I'm not great at it. But everyone knows if you go 5-2, all of a sudden the path towards 10 wins, the path towards the playoffs, it's a lot easier to wrap your head around than going to 4-3. Losing to a Commanders team that's also going to be fighting for a playoff spot. There's going to be a tiebreaker issue in there. And we all know how competitive and talented the NFC North is this year. So quick rundown with the Washington Commanders, just in case Jaden Daniels plays. And even if he doesn't, I know it's Marcus Mariota. The drop-off will be significant, but it won't be like falling off a cliff. Because, man, this Commanders offense has been humming all season long. Just some numbers to throw out there. They're leading the NFL right now in trips to the red zone. 4.6 a game. They're also tied for third in converting those red zone trips into touchdowns at 2.6 a game. So they're getting it done in the red zone. They're third in the NFL in points per game. They're third in the NFL in third down conversion. If you go across the board, a lot of the categories that they have offensively, man, they are in the top 3, top 5, top 8 categories in the NFL. This offense is legit. This is the first real true test for the Chicago Bears defense, in my opinion, thus far this season. Rushing yards, third a game, 165 a game as a team. 5.2 yards per carry, also tied for third. Third in the NFL in second half points. Fifth in the NFL in yards per pass attempt at 8.3. It goes on and on and on. I tried to find a stat where the Commanders' offense was a weakness. I had a hard time. I couldn't find it. So when we get into our previews for the game, a lot of this is going to come down to what the Chicago Bears can do to control their fate. So I figure the first key for the Bears to beat the Washington Commanders is I'm going to go and I'm going to look at the other side. And what the Bears need to do with what the Commanders are going to run out there, whether it is Jaden Daniels or whether it is Marcus Mariota. But I think the big one for this Bears defense in this game, the first key of the game is going to be getting off the field on third down. I just read that stat. They're third in the NFL. 48.8% of the time they're converting on third down. Leads to longer drives. You can gas your secondary. You can gas your defensive linemen. We're not sure exactly. We have depth, but we're not sure who's in, who's out for the Chicago Bears right now. And third down conversions just lead to more motivation, lead to more confidence for the opposing offense. If you take a look at it, walking into this year, I would have told you this would be a great matchup for the Chicago Bears defensive line versus the Washington Commanders offensive line. I didn't think that they're a very strong unit. There's some names on there that aren't going to woo and wow you, to quote former Bears defensive end and my co-host Corey Wooten. But to their credit, they've had a mix of some veteran signings. They got a draft pick that they've mixed into it. And offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury, who interviewed for the Bears job in the offseason, and running backs coordinator Anthony Lynn. I think they've done a great job with this O-line. Just watching some of the run highlights, you can see that they've got them playing with speed, pulling, getting to the outside, creating some walls, creating some leverage, and creating some matchups that their running backs like Austin Eckler can take advantage of. And they're running the football right now. Of course, it helps when a player like Jaden Daniels, who can make plays with his legs, can help not only accelerate that, but honestly can really be a huge factor. We'll be curious to see if it is Marcus Mariota under center, whether that significantly changes or whether Washington and Cliff Kingsbury says, you know what, we're just going to run what we run and do it to the best of our ability. But watching some of their tape, I am really impressed. They do a really good job of creating matchup problems. And from this Bears defense, I think there's been two things. There's a lot of things that we can put compliments on this Bears defense right now. There's probably two things I'd be slightly critical of. The first one is obvious. It's some of that run gap fit, that run assignment. We've given up a couple of big runs. Not too many, but when you think of Chuba Howard, when you think of how Jonathan Taylor kind of iced the game against the Bears several weeks ago in Indianapolis, some things you can clean up, some things you can get better at. The other one for this Bears defense is they typically seem to, like the cover two, like the Lovie Smith, there's that old cliche, and it's back here in Chicago, a little bit of that bend but don't break mentality. And when you talk about third down, getting them off the field, stalling some of those drives is certainly going to help with an offense that when they get into the red zone, they're one of the best at converting that into touchdowns. So when you talk about bend, don't break, this is the type of offense that breaks you in the red zone. It would behoove the Chicago Bears to try and get off the field on third down. try and make some plays, give the opportunity, and honestly, give Caleb Williams as many swings at the bat as you can possibly give him. So that's my first key. The rest of it all is going to be looking inward for me. And for the Chicago Bears, we talked about this early in the season. We've kind of gotten off of it a little bit because it's gotten better. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to make it a point of emphasis because we can't get complacent, Bears fans, with how we complain about this team. We love complaining about the offensive coordinator, and, man, we love complaining about the offensive line. So this is my second key for Chicago Bears at the Washington Commanders this week. It's just protect, protect, protect. I know the last couple weeks we've thrown some flowers at certain people in certain ways. Nate Davis out of the picture, Matt Pryor in. The offensive line has played better. I've said so much as on this show, but I think this is a really important matchup for the Chicago Bears to have an offensive line that plays a good game. When I say protect, 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 the good news is for the Washington Commanders, they're by far best pass rusher. Jonathan Allen hurt, out for the season. Lucky break for the Bears. And the Bears have had several lucky breaks this season. But this unit in general, Dexter Fowler, they got other guys that are plugging in and playing. They've got 107 pressures on the season. It's a pretty good number. It's a top 10 number. So do they get to the quarterback necessarily? No, but do they put enough pressure in the quarterback's face to maybe make them get off their step, maybe make a pass or a throw or a read a little bit quicker than they would like to? They seem to have done that, and they've seemed to be pretty creative in how they mix coverages and they mix different stunts to get to the quarterback. So from the Bears' perspective, it is so important we keep doing some of those fundamental small little things that have created some of the highlights that we're all excited about when it comes to Caleb Williams and the Bears offense. Protect him. Give him a good pocket. Allow him. We're going through it. We love his progressions. We love all of his reads. We love the fact that he's spreading the ball around. I think that's because he has more time in the pocket. We need to give him that. And on top of that, let's keep this hot streak rolling with our running game, with DeAndre Swift. He's really popped the last 3 weeks. It's been night and day. It's been a little Jekyll and Hyde. The first three, not so much. He's come back. He's put up a really good performance. I think we need to see that from him too as well. So protect, protect, protect. It's so important. One of my keys is going to be about the atmosphere and the narrative and everything that's being built into this game. What's the easiest way to do that? The thing that nobody talks about or nobody sees, just protect the quarterback. Play a good game. Also, as of this taping right now, I'm not sure whether Larry Borum or Ryan Bates are going to suit up for the game, but I am heartened and optimistic that the Bears' depth on offensive line is about to get better. And that can only mean good news for this week and long-term moving forward. So key number one was keep the Commanders off the field on third down. My key number two is protect, protect, protect. My key number three, first quarter blues. It hasn't been great, folks. We're middle of the pack in the NFL in first half points at 10.7. We're at the bottom of the NFL, just under 5 points a game in the first quarter. We've talked about it. Shane Waldron's first 15 plays, just for whatever reason, this team gets off to a slow offensive start. Am I advocating and mandating for the Chicago Bears to win that they need to score 10 to 14 points in the first quarter? No, I'm not, but a touchdown, man, that would be nice. You're on the road. You're playing a Commanders team that's vying all of a sudden for a playoff spot, maybe for even an NFC East title, something that they haven't been able to say in years. I think that home crowd is going to be jacked up, Jaden Daniels or no. Maybe even more so if Jaden Daniels isn't playing. Because as a fan, you get that vibe, right? Like, we're down our main guy. Maybe if I'm louder than normal, maybe I'm a piece of the puzzle that helps my team win. It's definitely possible. But again, the Chicago Bears have gotten off to really slow starts in the first quarter. Is this my biggest key to win? No, but eventually, at some point, they're going to have to get better in that area. Playing with a lead, getting off to a fast start, it really does build itself off into more successful moments for the Chicago Bears. And just think about it from a practical, fundamental aspect of when you're talking about NFL offense, sometimes what you do is you're going to run a play because you want to set up another play later. Sometimes you run a play and you notice what the opposition does, whether it is a coverage or a reaction, maybe the way that you leverage someone to one side of the field, that can then help you maybe run a counter play or something that offsets that later in the game. The quicker that you have successful offensive plays in the first quarter, it gives you more time to tinker with the tendencies of the opposition. You're not reacting or so worried about trying to get into your own stuff. You know, to the Bears' credit, they're fifth in the NFL, scoring about 14 points a game in the second half of games, which is almost a touchdown above what they were at last year. And we all know what the problems were with the Bears' offense last year. We all know what the problems with the Bears' team was last year. They were blowing leads late, and our quarterback at the time was struggling to put together scoring drives in the fourth quarter. We all know about it. But for the Bears, first quarter blues, can we get something going here? What's been nice about this Bears offense, especially over the last 3 games during this 3-game winning streak, is that just like the Commanders, when we get in the red zone, we're converting it into touchdowns. Now, we don't have the highest amount of trips to the red zone, but when we get there, we're converting on a touchdown percentage of 70% a clip. We have not been able to say that as Bears fans in a very long time, currently tied for 3rd in the NFL. But when you look at it, the Commanders, they score points in the first half. Look, they're averaging over 30 points a game. So even if you take a Jaden Daniels off the team, you got to say to yourself, the Commanders are probably going to get you anywhere between 18 to 24. That streak that Matt Eberflus has of allowing 21 or less points to consecutive opponents, that could come to an end in this game. We'll see with my final score prediction. But in the first half, the Commanders are averaging 16.4 points per game. That's good for 4th in the NFL. Second half, 14.7, right behind the Chicago Bears. Or excuse me, just above the Chicago Bears. So in the first quarter, man, it would be great to get off to a good start. Keep in mind, Caleb is playing in his hometown. This is going to be a nationally televised game. Whatever you can do, I think it's going to be a good component. Not the component to a Bears win, but I think it is going to play a piece. Now, my 4th and final key kind of encompasses all of this. And it's a little more about the intangible than the tangible. I've read you all the stats. We know the Commanders' offense is really good. We know their offensive line is playing better than normal. Joey, what about their defense? Their defense, which started off the year, I think, at the bottom of the NFL, has slowly creeped back up. If you look at a lot of their metrics, they typically are ranking out anywhere between 18 to 22. For example, rush yards allowed a game, they're 18th in the NFL. Pass yards allowed, only 197. That's good for 12th best in the NFL. So they're playing better. I would consider them more of a middle-of-the-pack type of defense that Caleb Williams will be going up against. And I personally think that that's really good news. You know, for reference on those pass yards allowed, the Chicago Bears are allowing only 180. That's 7th best in the NFL. So we have a talented secondary. The Commanders, not that far behind, but still very, very gettable. So my final key to a Chicago Bears win versus the Washington Commanders is very simple. It's one phrase, and it encompasses a lot of different things about how I feel about this game. It's just called handle the noise. There's a lot being built into this game. And as a Bears fan, I think you should be excited because I'm also excited. For the first time in a long time, the Chicago Bears are being worthy of being flexed into primetime games. Baby steps, people. Jim Nantz, Tony Romo on the call. A lot of people think that sometimes the Sunday night game or the Monday night game is the highest rated game of the NFL per week. Not correct. If you pull up the ratings, the most popular game that anyone will watch in the NFL across America is that afternoon slated game, that 3:25 slot. And the Commanders and Bears are going to be center stage, bright lights and all, in that matchup. That's part one of handling the noise. Part two, as I've already mentioned, this is a homecoming for Caleb Williams. He's from the D.C. area. And it seems like 1,000 years now, but if you go back into the offseason, a narrative that was ran around pretty frequently was, well, the question of how bad does Washington want Caleb Williams versus how bad does Caleb Williams want to play for his hometown? back during the great Bears Twitter civil war of our time, when we remember us debating between Justin Fields and Caleb Williams, and we were just awful to each other on social media. The side story was, well, a part of that piece was Washington willing to trade up to 1 to take the hometown kid? End of the day, maybe the Chicago Bears said no. Maybe Washington really wanted Jaden Daniels all along. I'm sure they will tell you that now. But it never came to fruition. And Caleb Williams, and this is what I kind of love about him, I think he remembers stuff, and I think he writes down names. And I'm not saying the Washington Commanders are a name on that list, but if you're telling me that he's the type of guy that uses moments, slights, CJ Stroud after a game as possible motivation, you can't tell me that playing in his hometown against the team that he did not grow up rooting for, but the team that I'm sure his buddies down the street, his aunts, his uncles, and I'm sure a lot of family members love near and dear to their heart, you can't tell me that this game doesn't mean anything to Caleb Williams. You can't tell me that winning in the D.C. area, Jaden Daniels or no, means a little something personally to Caleb Williams. Of course it means everything because it moves the Bears to 5-2. But that's another component of handling the noise. And then the other one is I'm feeling good about the Chicago Bears. I'm talking positively about them. I feel optimistic about them. They still haven't won a road game yet. And that's a technicality, right? Technically, they did win in a different country, overseas in London, but we were the home team in that game. But the first road win in a true road opponent stadium, when I say handle the noise, this is literal at this point, is going to be loud in there. We've gotten pretty good at our huddle to pre-snap operation. But again, we got to be careful. You know, rookie quarterbacks have a hard time managing the clock their first go-around. It happens. You end up burning timeouts that you don't want to end up using. You put yourself in bad spots, sometimes ending up with false start penalties. The down distance gets a little bit longer than you like, makes it difficult for you to move the chains. And I know that they were overseas. It technically was a road game, but again, I'm debating myself on this one. But again, there's a lot of Bears fans in that audience, in that crowd, in that stadium. This is going to be a lot of Washington Commanders fans rooting very hard for a team that is suddenly pretty good with a quarterback that they think has a very bright future. Does that sound familiar? If you've been to a Bears game yet this year, it's been pretty loud in there. Expect that same type of atmosphere. So handle the noise is encompassing a lot of things, like getting that first road win, that true first road win, the lights, the platform, the national stage for Caleb Williams, the homecoming of it all, coming back home to D.C. It's another key to the game. It isn't X's and O's, but it's something that the Chicago Bears, and Caleb Williams, I think specifically when I'm talking about this, if he can handle that, which I think that he can, the Bears got a great shot to win a football game. My player of the game, last week I said Keenan Allen was ready for a breakout game. I'm going back. I'm doing a little chalk on this one because it's been a couple of weeks, and I think he's due. And the last time the Chicago Bears played the Commanders, this guy had an all-timer. I'm going with DJ Moore for my X Factor, my player of the game this week. We've talked about it here on the show. Caleb Williams is doing a wonderful job spreading the ball around. One week it's this guy, the next week it's another guy. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, it was Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet. The week before that, DJ Moore. The week before that, Rome Odunze. I think it's DJ Moore's turn. If he's in the office right now with a ticket with the number, I think we're about to call his number. And when you talk about a little bit about what's at stake at this game, this isn't a must-win, but this is something the Chicago Bears would like to have and should get in this game. I think you got to go to your best player. And I think for Caleb Williams, I think DJ Moore down the field, I like those odds. Just looking at the schedule, the weather very briefly in D.C. Doesn't look like it's going to be very windy. Weather's going to be pretty good. Caleb Williams has talked briefly subtly that the wind at Soldier Field has been a factor in terms of how he's been able to push the ball downfield. So he felt really great in London because there was no wind. It doesn't look like there's going to be a ton of it on Sunday. I could be wrong, but that could also help him out. But I'm picking DJ Moore as my pick to click, my player of the week. I think he goes over 100 yards. I see him in the end zone, and I think he's going to be a big reason for why my final score prediction is going to be correct. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. The Chicago Bears against the Washington Commanders. I am 5-1 on my picks so far this season. Against my better judgment, I picked the Chicago Bears to beat the Colts. Colts beat the Bears. Other than that, I've been pretty clean. 5-1 on the season. I'm going with another win, Bears fans. I think the Chicago Bears are going to beat the Commanders 27-20. And I hear you. After everything, all the compliments I just laid at the feet of the Commanders' offense and their ability to put up points, as it leans right now, I don't really see Jaden Daniels playing. I could be wrong, but even if he does, he could be compromised. I'm going to stick with it for one more week. I think the Chicago Bears keep their opponent under 21 points for another consecutive week. I really do believe that this Bears offense now can be counted on to give you 20 to 24 points on a weekly basis. And if you're telling me the Bears defense is giving up 21 or less, we have ourselves a recipe for a winning team. It's what I'm rooting for. It's what I'm seeing right now with my eyes. And at this juncture in the season, I think the Chicago Bears are ready to go out there and pick up a huge road win against the Commanders. Regardless of quarterback, picking up a win for the Bears would be absolutely crucial at this juncture. We all know about the NFC North schedule. 6 of the final 8 games of the year against the NFC North, which is by far the best division in the NFL. They play the 49ers and the Seahawks during that stretch. No pushovers. Both of them hopefully playoff bound for themselves later on in the season. So this game, the Cardinals, the Patriots, got to go at least 2-1. I got them picking up this first one against the Commanders, which would almost secure that 2-1 mentality over these next 3 games. And I think the Chicago Bears come out with a win. Thank you so much for tuning in to Sports Talk Chicago with Joey Christopoulos. Here on WLS AM 890, you can follow me at Joey Sports Guy on my own personal social handle, or you could follow Sports Talk Chicago at Sports Talk Shy. When you get out of your car, when you're done having fun on a Saturday night, if you want to check us out on YouTube, just keyword Sports Talk Chicago. When you do it, go to our channel. Please like, comment, subscribe on our videos, and subscribe to that channel. That would be greatly appreciated. This is Sports Talk Chicago here on WLS AM 890. Happy Saturday night, Chicago. I appreciate the time. I appreciate the listen. You will catch me next week.